This is Richard Solomon. Welcome to Taking Care of Business. When we get an absolute phenomenal guest, we send people to grab them and bring them back to the studio. So we are with Deidre Ventura again because the show that we did with her was so phenomenal and so useful and so full of important information about how to take care of your health and how to reclaim your life one bite at a time through both her website, healthylivingwithdeirdre.com, and her book, Upgrade Your Life, One Bite at a Time. And she gave us so much great information that we want to continue on this journey of really healing our bodies with good, sound nutrition. And I could tell you that she's just got great information. And she also has a bed and breakfast where if you actually stay there, you could actually live the life that would bring about a lot of great changes in your body and probably your spirit. So you do something great at your bed and breakfast, which is you provide a structure of eating and living so that you can be healthy. How do I do that at home?
Well, there are a couple of things, and it's a little bit of a culture shock to people, but one of the things you want to do is remove all the toxins from your experience. So, for instance, here, we don't use any toxic chemicals. We clean with baking soda and white distilled vinegar and various other essential oils for removing bacteria and things of that nature. So the one thing you want to do is not overtax your immune system with all these toxic chemicals. You know, like, yes, we're getting rid of the bacteria, but we're using Clorox to do it. I don't see how that's a benefit. And it's especially harmful to children. So anything in your household that cannot be eaten by a child needs to be removed. So that would include Windex and every other cleaning product you would have. That would include laundry soap and, skincare products and hair care products and deodorant and everything, just everything that you find in a typical grocery store, which I fondly refer to as the poison store. So all those things that are under your kitchen sinks, you need to get rid of all that stuff. The second thing you need to do is do the same thing in your pantry. So if your and I cover these things in the book, like, you know, we're a society of convenience. So we want our mustard, we want our mayonnaise, we want, you know, these various other things that make preparing food simpler and faster and easier and tasty. And I understand the spice trade because without spices is like, life without love, right? So we want to eliminate all those 10,000 food additives and anything that you can't pronounce, anything that you don't find in the produce section or in your grandma's garden, you want to eliminate, and you want to replace it with a high-quality, deliciously tasty, non-toxic version of the thing, whether that's mayonnaise or soy sauce or mustard or butter or ice cream or any of the convenient foods that you want to enjoy. So that's getting rid of canned goods. That's getting rid of, go to dry goods. You don't need to have things in a can necessarily. And it sounds a little overwhelming, but your body will love you for it. And I make it so simple in the book. I go through all the spices, all the condiments, whether it's salsa or ketchup, just to give you the high-quality version that's available in the marketplace and even where to buy it.
Okay. So I've cleaned up my house. I've thrown out the
threw out the old couch and you got the new improved couch in the living room now.
Right. So what do I do now?
Well, now it's really
how do I shop? What do I do?
It's repatterning. So one of the things that if you go to my website, you can download a companion guide, which tells you all the names of the products, images of the products, and all the places to buy them. So whatever's on your traditional shopping list, you just replace it with a higher quality item. And now it's really about learning food combinations. So let's say you're a sandwich person. You're always combining deli meats with a grain. That is a no-no. So now you get rid of the bread, and you start rolling up whatever it is you would otherwise put in the middle of the bread into, Boston lettuce or into romaine lettuce. And you slowly, and you'll get fat. The faster you do things, the faster the results. The slower you do things, the slower the results. But you want lasting results. So it has to be a pace that you're comfortable with. Some people are like, rip the Band-Aid off. Other people are like, I want to do it slowly. Not a problem. Whatever works for you, you'll be successful if you stick with it. So it's about understanding food combinations and understanding how to eat the rainbow every day. And you'll find there are certain foods that for this particular part of your life, you have to have every day. And you'll find your own rhythm. It's about communicating with your own body. And when you go to reach for those convenient things that you normally reach for the bowl of fruit on the counter. You don't have to open the refrigerator. Ask your body, what do you want now? It will tell you. Spend the time to listen. Don't open the refrigerator door and stare in there.
I do that all the time. I swear to you, I do that. Whenever I'm hungry, the first thing is just to look in the refrigerator.
Well, one of the things that I do is, as I'm putting a meal on the table and as I'm cleaning up the meal from the table, I'm preparing the next meal. So that when I'm hungry, the meal has already been prepared. It's already pre-prescribed. It's already sitting there, ready, waiting for me. So I'm planning out all the colors the night before. Like you lay out your clothes the night before. You don't say, oh, gee whiz, I have a meeting today. I better go to the dry cleaner and get my suit, right? You have more than one suit. So you have to treat your food the same way. You look in the cart when you're at the grocery store, and you put all the colors in there, and then you plan out your meals and your inventory. And when you're preparing your food, when you're not hungry, after you've just eaten a deliciously satisfying, nutritious meal, the next time you're hungry, the meal's ready and there to go. So I always have a pot of soup. I always have a salad.
Okay.
And then you can add to that with, some sautéed vegetables or some grains or rice or barley. If you're particularly anxious, barley is very soothing. Cherries are very soothing.
Now, when you say you didn't really like, even if you have canned organic vegetables, you're not a big fan of cans, and if you need it in a pinch?
We don't want to use cans. We should never be in a pinch. If there's a nuclear fallout or a civil war or something, cans are useful.
So my better alternative is frozen?
Frozen, freeze-dried. I mean, look, there are some things that are difficult to find not in a can, like coconut milk. So, I'm not saying you're never going to use a can, but you want to minimize your canned goods.
Okay. As far as nuts, I know that in our prior show you talked about a special kind of Brazilian peanut. What other kinds of nuts do you like?
It's you should always eat nuts in the winter, which is when they're in season. Always buy raw, never salted, never roasted, and you always want to soak them overnight in alkaline water. This activates the life force in the nut, it softens the nut up, it starts the digestion process, and if it's sprouted, it should grow into a freaking tree.
Wow.
You want to eat the highest quality. You want to eat the life force of that particular thing. So, whether it's cashews or pecans, or it doesn't really matter all that much. I mean, enjoy the nut that you particularly enjoy, and that'll change over different parts of your life. When you're pregnant, you're going to want different things. So but soak them overnight. And that also leads to that pre-planning thing. You know, when you get dressed in the morning, you don't think, oh my gosh, I didn't wash the things, I better wash it so I can wear it today, right?
Right.
Why are we treating our food that way? We put gas in our car when we know we're going to need it the next day, right?
Right, yeah.
We don't wait for it to go on to empty and you're starving to death and the car's about to run out of gas. Like, treat your body the same way. So plan your meals. And when you plan, you're soaking your beans overnight. You're soaking your grains overnight. You're soaking your nuts overnight. And you're laying out all your colors. Now remember, grains and nuts are the same color. They're basically tan, right? Tan is not in the rainbow. So those are fillers.
Okay. Now, are you always soaking in alkaline water?
Always.
Okay. And you're always drinking alkaline water?
Always.
Okay. How do you feel about something like, you know, was it Mountain Valley spring water from Pennsylvania that it's like a higher mineral water? Do you like that?
Well,
And it comes in glass bottles. I like that.
Well, I certainly like glass bottles. I'm not particularly familiar with the particular one you're speaking about, but,
Right.
you know, you can do a simple alkalinity test. One of the things that concerns me about our water supply, which I was concerned about 20 years ago when I bought a water filter system that's designed to service 35,000 gallons a day, and I only use in the bed and breakfast 35,000 gallons every 4 months. And I'm not satisfied with a system like that. I have a double backup. So reverse osmosis is one of the only ways to remove pharmaceuticals from the water supply. Now, everybody is eating pharmaceuticals in this country and in all the countries. And there's no public water system that removes pharmaceuticals, right? You go take a pee test, and they determine what pharmaceuticals you're using. That's all winding up in our water supply. So you've got fish that have both male and female genetics.
Right. I've read that because of the water supply situation, people are getting things like, I think Prozac is like in very high concentrations and in small amounts. But it was sort of like, hormone replacement drugs and some antidepressants are all in the water supply.
So I was concerned about this 20 years ago when I bought the water filter system in our policy in our home. We have a water filter system on the whole entire house. It's what we garden with. We water the garden with it. We shower in it, and we drink it. And it's all, highly alkaline, and we don't consume any water products outside the house. I carry it with me.
How's distilled water work into this?
Distilled water?
Yeah.
Distilled water can be useful when you're getting special treatments through homeopathics for a short period of time, like 24 hours. But distilled water is essentially dead. It's very useful when ironing.
Okay. Well, if you took distilled water and threw some, trace minerals, would that help liven it up, or?
No, because you see, the interesting thing about water is it's the hydrogen and oxygen bond that creates the curvature of the water. And the stronger the curvature, the higher the oxygen content. That, actuaries, dictate that people who live closer to sea level live longer than people who live at high altitudes. And the reason for that is the higher oxygen content in the air. It's the same thing with water. The higher the oxygen content in the water, the more energy and oxygen being distributed to your systemic cells.
Wow.
So you want that hydrogen-oxygen bond to be strong and have good curvature so that it carries more oxygen.
Fascinating. So when we come back, I got to ask, how did you learn all this? Because I'm sure this was required over years, even though you may have been worried about the water supply in the 1970s. I'm sure your thinking about food has evolved over all those years.
Absolutely.
All right. So when we come back, it's Richard Solomon, Deidre Ventura, the author of Upgrade Your Life One Bite at a Time, and her website is healthylivingwithdeirdre.com. And her bed and breakfast is called?
the Harbor Rose in Cold Spring Harbor.
There you go. So we'll be right back. Keep it locked in and Taking Care of Business with Richard Solomon. All right, Richard Solomon, welcome back to Taking Care of Business with my very special guest, Deidre Ventura. Deidre, so how'd you learn all this cool stuff?
It's really been a journey of a variety of different factors, as you might imagine. But when I was in kindergarten, actually, I had terrible, terrible stomach pain and like excruciating, horrible pain. And, of course, my parents took me, doctor after doctor after doctor. And it turned out I had a bleeding duodenal ulcer, which no one would ever expect in a 5-year-old. And at the time, I couldn't communicate it. But I remember being at the Long Island Game Farm, and I remember holding my right hand on my left arm between the elbow and the wrist and feeling the two bones in your arm. And at the same time, I was approaching some chickens that lifted their wings and started, kind of running away from me, as they would any child, right? And I realized the people I loved, my parents, were feeding me my friends. And it just did not agree with me. It was the first time I realized that they were feeding me animals. And I think that was the beginning of me having these terrible stomach pains and the constant argument about, eat your farina and, eat your eggs. And I wanted nothing to do with dairy. I wanted nothing to do with meat. And I wanted to have, broccoli rabe for breakfast. So I was able to convince my mother that I knew how to heal myself better than the doctors and better than what these other people, were claiming, which at the time, when you had somebody with an ulcer, at the time they would recommend Jell-O and, dairy and eggs and no spicy food. And anyway, that's all changed now. And so I was able to change my diet and heal myself. So then I realized, feeling very empowered and being able to communicate and understand the way my body was communicating with me through symptoms, even if I couldn't articulate it to adults, that I almost felt like I was born into this world with a different way of looking at things, like a different kind of common sense. People, there are lots of foods that have not materially changed over thousands of years, and people are still consuming them. And now we have all these frankenfoods, in the marketplace that, people will eat freaking anything. And it's crazy to me. It's just like, you want fresh, real, original food. And it's deliciously nutritious. And your body responds to it. So over the years, I've always kept a food diary. And I always note down what I've eaten, when I've eaten, and how I felt. Just a couple of quick emotions. When things go in, you want to pay attention to how things come out, and you want to pay attention to what your sleep patterns are. So it's sort of, look, any study, you could read any study that anybody does anywhere in the world. It really doesn't matter. What matters is, how is your body responding to what you're doing today, which is going to be different than next week or next year or 10 years from now. And when you start to learn how to communicate with your body and give it what it needs, you don't need to go to any experts. You're the one living inside. You're the one who knows your body better than anyone else. What do you need some third-party opinion for? Develop that relationship. That's a critical relationship, the relationship you have with your body.
So theoretically, if you eat this kind of format, you really probably shouldn't be necessarily needing a lot of supplements.
No, the whole point, supplements are training wheels for people trying to get back on the track of what's, critical for their body at that particular point in their life. And your life is constantly changing. So the foods that you need to eat at different points in your life are going to be dependent on what your life experience is like.
So how did you learn what foods treat what ailments?
Well, as a teenager, I studied Chinese medicine, and I read over and over and over again two critical texts. One is the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine, which is a 4,000-year-old text, and the other text is a dictionary or encyclopedia of herbs and remedies in Chinese medicine, which actually predates but was translated and accumulated of the ancient texts at about the same time. And I was fortunate enough to find them in an antique shop, if you could believe it, translated into English, and they became my most treasured books. And I wanted to become a Chinese medicine doctor, but of course at the time, acupuncture was illegal in the United States. But it made sense to me. Somehow it just spoke to me. In high school, friends would have menstrual problems, and they would complain about all their symptoms, and they would take Advil, and I'd be like, your body's communicating to you. You need to correct the imbalance that you're experiencing, not mask it with some kind of pill. And now, 40 years later, there's a class action suit against ibuprofen. I mean, this was obvious to me as a teenager. But I don't look at the world the way most people do. Most people, I'm Italian. Italians don't, they resist authority. Like, there's no authority on my body except me.
Right. Well, that's a dictatorship. But a good one. A friendly one.
It's a benevolent dictatorship.
How do you put together all of what you do, both in the book and in your bed and breakfast? And how much was your bed and breakfast a petri dish for your book?
That's a very interesting question. I think that we live more like Europeans than like Americans. And I think we are more connected to the environment. Like, here's a little-known fact. There's something called electromagnetic radiation poisoning. Many people are unaware of it, but you can feel it strongly when you walk into an electronics store with, a million TVs and electronic equipment running around. Germans have actual standards for these things. So I notice when I drive a German car, I can drive 7, 8, 9, 10 hours and I don't get tired. I drive a Japanese car, I'm tired in 2 hours. And it's because they have standards to electromagnetic radiation poisoning admitting to the air, and the Japanese don't, and the Americans don't either. That's why we have power lines over schools and cattle farms. So, I neutralized the electromagnetic radiation poisoning. The house was built 200 years ago. The energy is very, very light. People ask me if we refinish the floors. They're original. They're nearly 200 years old. I just stripped all the wax off and clean them with vinegar and citrus oil. And so people have an opportunity to taste, because I'm always in the kitchen, my various creations, and guests will come up to me and say, your daughter is eating leaves. I'm like, no, she's not. And they're like, no, I'm telling you, she's eating grass. I go, that's food. She recognizes food. Those are Chinese chives. These are the landscape is slowly evolving into more and more and more food. Every year I plant more food in the landscape. So I think people become very disconnected to where their food comes from. And I think the bed and breakfast is a way to have people visit and experience things a little differently. So everything's organic. We don't use any toxic cleaners. There's, Egyptian cotton robes and linens and, down blankets. And a water filter system with no chlorine in it, never mind the fact that it's alkaline, and we do bottled alkaline water. People don't necessarily notice one particular item, but they notice they sleep better than they've ever slept. People are always telling me that. And they have an opportunity to get a glimpse into living a little differently. And if I'm doing my job well, they take some piece of information home and incorporate it into their life. Because if you touch a person's life and their course changes even just 1 degree, you wind up in a very different place in the years to come. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to allow people to naturally experience something that might work better for them.
Do you do anything in terms of air filtration?
We don't.
Okay.
Just well, I shouldn't say that. We have, are you familiar with the salt rock, like the pink salt rock lamps?
No.
So
but I am now.
They collect ionized. They basically reduce dust in the air because they have the reverse charge. So, but we don't do an extensive air filter system. No.
Oh, so tell me about.
But we have 42 windows.
So tell me about this salt thing.
It's the same pink Himalayan sea salt, and they've become popular now in the form of a lamp, and they attract there's positive and negative electron charges on dust, so they reverse the electron and essentially reduce dust in the air.
Wow. I have to, because I notice my office is very dusty, and I wonder if that's because of all the electronic equipment.
You need to go get a neutralizer for your EMG, electromagnetic radiation poisoning, and if you get a salt lamp, not only are they lovely ambient lamp, light, but it'll reduce the dust considerably.
So that has to lead me to the question about cell phones. I take it that the cell phones are probably problematic on a number of levels for your health.
But really addictive and fun.
Yes. What do you do to still use cell phones but not necessarily absorb a lot of their emissions? Well,
ideally, it's just not really practical. Ideally, you want to keep it outside your energy field. And if your energy field is in good condition and you're not living in the city where it's cramped, that means keep it 8 feet away from you. But keeping it 8 feet away from you makes it useless, right? So, and putting a headset on or Bluetooth just kind of defeats the purpose anyway. So the way I see it is never keep it in the same pocket, or I keep it in my purse or a couple of feet away from me. But if you want the luxury and the wonderful fun stuff about cell phones, then just balance your diet so that you can tolerate. Like, I'd rather tolerate a cell phone because it's actually providing a service to me than tolerate Clorox. So you got to pick and choose. Like, okay, am I going to drink? Am I going to use a cell phone? Am I going to, what is it? What are the things that I'm going to contribute knowingly that are, less than desirable, but it's a choice, right?
Right. But I guess, the problem, is we have so much it sounds as if there's so much toxicity out there between, the air we breathe, the water as is, the standard retail food as is, that we're fighting almost a losing battle to poison.
The body is amazing. The human body can do amazing things, and it's so quick to respond. The smallest change. And, it's about not being, it's just about making informed decisions. You make a decision. All day long you're making decisions, right? Do I buy a practical car? Do I buy a luxury car? Do I buy, good gas? Do I need four-wheel drive? Do I need a truck, right? You just decide. You want a cell phone? Great. Have fun with the cell phone.
So
just balance it out in other areas of your life. Don't sleep in an electric blanket.
So how did we lose our way? How did we become sort of everything?
World War II.
Okay, but how does World War II explain some kind of meat shrink wrapped in plastic in a styrofoam container?
Oh, well, that's kind of simple. All the factories that were developing materials for the war got repurposed into food farms and government subsidies.
Because I noticed that I read something on the internet today that we have an abundance of government cheese. So, and apparently dairy is really not good for you, even though there are many commercial forces that tell you that, dairy is great for you.
All true. And if, the way I see it is this, the changing government policy is a long, onerous road. And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't happen, I don't know. But every day you get to choose and vote with your dollar. So if you're voting with your dollar, you can make a difference. Because companies want to stay profitable. And if you're not buying their product, they're going to change their product. So as long as you stay informed, the marketplace will respond. Now, one of the reasons why cheese and many vegetarians don't give up cheese is because naturally occurring morphine is in the protein in cheese, the casein. It's naturally occurring in the cow morphine. It's addictive.
Wow. Is that why you have a glass of warm milk before you go to bed?
I don't know why people have a glass of warm milk before they go to bed.
No, because I say, is that because it releases the casein, which gives you a sort of a nice calming effect? I
think anything warm gives you a calming effect, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I went from breast milk to table food because I refused to consume mother's milk from another species as a child. My mother told me I threw the bottle across the room on numerous occasions.
I talked to Dr. Michael Greger about that, and he said not only are we the only species that drinks the milk from another species, but we're the only species that drinks milk beyond weaning. That, remember, milk is designed for babies to grow fast and to bulk up.
The cows, baby cow milk, which is what we're generally speaking about, is designed to make the child or the calf 1,500 pounds.
Right.
And now you have 9-year-olds having heart attacks and diabetes, and adult type 2 diabetes, pre-pubescent. Now you tell me there's not a problem there.
Oh, it's a total problem. We're beginning to see in the literature and on the internet a push towards more natural foods and a more natural lifestyle. So maybe this is good that movement is gaining momentum, and you're one of the pioneers and advocates out there. And if enough voices like yours are heard and followed, maybe we can make some of the changes that'll keep us all healthy and alive for a lot longer.
Well, it's sad, but the life expectancy of children who grew up on processed food is less than their parents. And I just looked up a quick quote for you. An astounding 163 billion pounds of milk and milk products a year are produced by U.S. dairy farmers.
Wow.
And the U.S. dairy advertising budget is $180 million. and the government spends $30 billion annually subsidizing animal and dairy.
Wow.
Now, tell me that money can't be used for something more productive.
All right, so with that question, we'll be right back. Keep it locked in. Richard Solomon, Taking Care of Business with Deidre Ventura. All right, Richard Solomon with Deidre Ventura. Deidre is a author and in my opinion, an expert on food, nutrition, healing. And we're continuing our discussion. Upgrade Your Life One Bite at a Time is her book, and healthylivingwithdeirdre.com is her website. And she also has a wonderful bed and breakfast. So the question I have is the ultimate parent question. What do I feed the kids? As you can tell, out there is pizza, hot dogs, chicken fingers, French fries, burgers, dogs, ice cream, cake, the usual kid fare. I know that can't be the best diet. And yet kids are very, very finicky from what I see and in my own personal experience. What can we feed the kids that is healthy and nutritious and yet fun, aside from just throwing a banana at them once in a while? Because they like bananas. I haven't met a kid who hasn't liked a banana and some fruit, but how do I get them to really eat the better things, to not want, pizza and chicken fingers and hot dogs and things like that?
Well, my daughter is 8 years old, and I think that kids essentially follow their parents, and they follow whatever it is they're exposed to. So one of the policies that I had when I was growing up is my mom always told me that if it was on TV, it was pretend and make-believe, which meant that all those toys I saw on commercials weren't really available. That was the philosophy she taught me. And so I kind of used that, and I said to my daughter at a very early age, way before she could even, put together a sentence, that everything advertised was not worth buying. And if you kind of use that as a sorting mechanism, if there's a coupon for it, if it's advertised on TV, they're spending more money in advertising dollars than they are in the product itself. You want to have high-quality products. The other thing is no soy, because soy messes up the endocrine system, it messes up the hormones, and no sugar. Sugar is like, toxic poison to children. So she has learned now that she's 8 years old to read labels. And we go to the grocery store and she sees something, popcorn, potato chips, whatever it is. She picks it up. She starts reading it out loud. She goes, "Mom, it has eggs in it. Mom, it has salt in it. Mom, it has sugar in it." And she's like, and she gets, frustrated and throws it back on the shelf. Now, it is a little challenging in school. She wants to eat the school lunch, and she, I eat every color every day. So especially with toddlers, they love to have foods that support motor skills. So the grape tomatoes are a wonderful thing. The baby spinach. I used to take baby spinach and put a little dab of hummus and then another baby spinach on top, and I'd make little bite-sized toddler finger sandwiches. And to this day, she loves raw spinach. And so I think it's a matter of teaching them to recognize real food when they see it. So one time she was out with a babysitter, and they were at the park, and they were longer than they should have been, and they didn't take as much food as they should have been. It was a new babysitter. And my daughter got hungry, and she spotted an apple tree. And so she got a rock, and she started throwing the rock at the apple so it would fall from the tree so she could have something to eat. Now, other kids might say, "Let's go to a deli." So it's about teaching them at an early age, and especially with teething. If you don't give the child anything other than mother's milk and no other dairy, they'll have no pain when it comes to teething. And as long as you keep their water intake high. and they won't have any of the congestion and the nose running and all the, crying at night and all that, horrible, horrible stuff. So I think it's really just educating them, and when you do, they start educating the other kids. Like, I remember when my daughter was about 3 years old, Grandma asked me to stop at the bakery to get her something. We, of course, don't eat anything at the bakery. And there's a little girl hiding behind her mother's legs about the same age. And my daughter's going through the cases going, sugar, white flour, we don't eat that, we don't eat that. And then it was the little girl and her mom's turn, and she was very coy and hiding behind her mother. And my daughter, went really close to her and tipped her head up and looked at her face and said, why are you so sad? And then they walked right up to the case and picked out a nice, big, fluffy cupcake. And my daughter got in the car and she said, Mommy, she's sad because she's eating sugar, right? They get it.
Yeah.
They're smarter than you think. And if you start them out right and they're following your behavior patterns, because they won't do what you say, they'll do what you do. So we eat soup and salad for breakfast, and my daughter eats greens because she needs the energy to go to school and all the activities that she has. Much more active than I am. But when we go to a restaurant, I teach her. She knows how to order at a restaurant. She doesn't eat off a children's menu, and what kid does? They always want to be adults, right? And she says, I'd like Caesar salad, no croutons, please. And then she, will ask what other kind of vegetables. She'll always ask what kind of oils they have, because she's learned how I question restaurants. So I think it's a matter of raising them from the beginning with good information and not allowing them to be poisoned by the advertising and the Happy Meals and the extra toys and all the other nonsense. And you can make it really fun. I mean, sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a whole bunch of different things, like, baby carrots and celery and cucumbers sliced up different ways, and pickles and olives and all different colored olives and, different leaves, and just a whole bunch of, let's call it small shapes. And then you give them a plate. And then you ask them to start building a picture. And they'll make bridges and, make broccoli into little trees. And they really can have fun with it. And it's about having fun. It's about being interactive. We belong to a CSA organic farm. So we talk to the farmer. We go there and pull a carrot out of the ground. And when she sees food out in the world, she'll pull the carrot out of the ground, she'll wipe it on her clothes, and she'll start eating it. And then people are like, oh, it's dirty. That's where food comes from. It's not dirt. It's freaking microbes that are really super important to the immune system. I mean, people who grow up on a farm don't get sick. So, it's about being connected. And one day she says to me, Mommy, how do I know what leaves to eat outside? And I said, well, you watch the animals. Look at what this caterpillar is eating. Which leaves are he eating? So he was eating we gave a caterpillar a bunch of different kinds of leaves from the yard, and his favorite one was the maple one. So she grabbed the maple leaf, took a bite, and said, wow, Mom, it's sweet. You made a good choice.
But there's one caveat. Deer like to eat poison ivy.
They also don't get poison ivy, right?
Exactly, but that's why you can't touch deer either, because the poison ivy actually can be on their fur.
Oh, sure.
I learned that when I was in Fire Island. In fact, one thing I want for all those out there, there's a really cool tour of the sunken forest in Fire Island, and I remember being with a park ranger, and we were going through the dunes. And he stops everybody and says, these are beach plums. And we picked the beach plums and we ate them. They were phenomenal. But I would never have thought, to go to the beach to eat anything, unless it came off of an ice cream truck or something like that.
Not a fan of seaweed, are you?
Not the kind that washes up on the South Shore, but I do like seaweed. But I just, for some reason, don't really trust the seaweed that's in our local waters. Maybe that's just a fear.
Yeah, I find that if you start with toddlers and you give them small shapes and you engage them in the process of tasting different things, and you give them super high quality, like a lot of kids are allergic to strawberries. They're not really allergic to strawberries all the time. They're often allergic to the pesticides on the strawberries. But I've never met a kid who doesn't like a berry. And when it comes to ice cream and birthday parties and all that other kind of stuff that you have to, sort of contend with, sometimes I feel like I'm raising a Hasidic kid in a non-Hasidic community. And so we just have a policy. We go to the birthday party. We don't participate in any of the food. We don't participate in any of the liquids. And we bring our own. And, there are some wonderful products on the marketplace now, thank God, so I don't have to make everything from scratch. And one of those wonderful products is something called Naked Coconut. It's a coconut milk ice cream. It's sweetened with agave, which although, agave has no glycemic load, it's very high in fructose, which can be hazardous over a long period of time when it's consumed not combined with a heavy fat. And, coconut milk and coconut cream, of course, are very good, healthy, brain-supporting, healthy fat, so it's a good marriage with agave. And there's a lot of wonderful flavors, and there's no chemicals in it, and it's delicious. And I just minimize it to, you're eating your whole dinner, you've eaten all your colors, and you've done a good job all day. And if she brings it up to me, of course you can have some. 4 teaspoons.
Okay, what is it called again?
It's called, the brand is Naked Coconut, and it comes in a variety. It comes in ice pops, but it also comes in the pint-sized containers, and they have, chocolate mint, and they have cherry, and they have a bunch of different flavors. But I minimize it to 4 teaspoons, and then I serve it with a very, very small wooden spoon, so that you're savoring it, not like 8 ounces of freaking ice cream. And of course, this is dairy-free and sugar-free and no chemical. So it's actually a high-quality product, but I treat it like a very, very, very special occasion event. You know what I mean?
Well, because you need
small,
those.
Modest
yeah,
amount.
you need those.
And, what you'll find is that your children will start being advocates. They're the ones, they'll start teaching the other kids.
And then what do you give your daughter as a snack or snack foods to carry around with her?
Well, sliced apples, sliced pears, bananas, of course, nuts. She's a big fan of a lot of dried fruits, particularly goji berries and cacao nips. I
love goji berries. What was the last? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the chocolate nips.
And we have goji berry trees.
Do you?
They're nursing in my nursery. They've only produced like 3 berries last season, but eventually they'll be mighty, right?
Well, I always thought that those grew only like in the Himalayas,
which is the same zone climate as here.
Ah.
So they'll grow here.
How do you feel about mulberries?
Oh, I love mulberries. I'm a big mulberry.
We used to have a mulberry tree in our backyard, but it's gone. And
yeah, they don't last as long as we do. So you got to plant another one.
You know what? That's the thing. I actually really liked having fruit trees in the backyard. When I it's funny, when I grew up in Queens, not that far from my house, was a little farm. It was a very small farm. It was a little tomato farm, and there was a horse there. And this was only 1970. And yet now, everything's been bulldozed and the whole thing. And I think the only way to sort of get back to having local food is to have our own little gardens and our little, herb gardens and things like that. And you see some of that. You see some of that coming in, even in places like there's in Brooklyn. There's a real drive now for people to do sort of like rooftop farming. I hear about and things like that. So maybe
and permaculture which is basically an edible landscape, a self-sufficient ecosystem that there's a fellow, Jeff Lawton, who created in a 4-year period out of a desert in somewhere in the Middle East, 10 acres of land, and turned it into literally a food forest. And if, there's some programs now, permaculture for children, there's textbooks, they're trying to get it into the various school systems, and if you can, I sort of give up on people after puberty, because you're not going to change the world with those people. But if you can teach children, they will change the world.
We need that. We do.
They're our future, because, for a lot of us, whatever we're going to do has already been done.
Does your book address child nutrition?
It's sprinkled in. I mean, it's a book designed for adults, although my daughter at 8 years old does read it. But there's a lot of tips and suggestions in it about how to. And there's a lot of stories in it about my daughter, teaching her about glycemic load, and there's a lot of little very simple lessons, but and a lot of recommendations for toddlers. So it's, obviously it's an adult book. It's not designed for children, but I think that any parent can gravely benefit. And if you change your patterns, your children will follow.
All right. So with that, I'm going to be starting to make some of these subtle changes, and we'll come back in a few months and see how I'm doing. So that'll put some pressure on me to actually adhere to the plan and give people a snapshot of this is the start. This is like day 1 or day 0. And we'll take that journey together, and then maybe we'll do a show about what worked and where we are and maybe the improvements in how I feel and things like that.
I can't wait. So
this will be a great experience for me, and then maybe our whole radio family can join us on that journey. For those who are listening, it's Upgrade Your Life One Bite at a Time, healthylivingwithdeirdre.com. And what's the phone number to get a reservation at your bed and breakfast?
516-482-2740.
All right. Give her a call. Stay, eat healthy, find your spiritual balance, and we'll see you all in a week. Thanks for listening. This is Richard Solomon taking care of business with Deidre Ventura.